How did this guy from New York City learn to speak fluent Chinese within just a couple of years of graduating high school? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down the method that he used to learn Chinese fast. So whether you're learning Chinese or you want to learn another foreign language to a high level, now you're going to know how. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Ollie Richards, and this channel is all about helping you learn a new language quickly through the power of story so that you can become fluent faster and live your best life, just like this guy did, Ari from New York. Let's take a look at him in action.
Fish dumpling. Both 两个都好吃是吗？那鱼饺我好像没吃过哎。好吃这个 OK。那但是我能不能要一个小一点的？因为我现在
So Ari, or Xiaoma as he's known on YouTube, started learning Chinese back in 2008 during his first year at university.
I was just kind of always interested in learning languages, and so ended up in college going to live in China for a year. You know, at that point I had already studied 1 year of college Chinese, and so by the time I went to China, I wasn't really fluent, but I had some language under my belt.
Now, before you say, he went to China, that's why he's fluent, bear in mind that most people who go to live in another country never learn the language, and those who do don't get it anywhere near the kind of level that Ari did.
In China, I took this class called Princeton in Beijing, which is like a super intense immersion experience in Chinese. After that, I was probably able to speak like basic conversational Chinese, and then I stayed on in Beijing for another year. By the end of that year, I was definitely, fully fluent in Chinese.
So what's interesting about this is the timeline. So he studied Chinese for 1 year in college in the US, and then he went on a 1 year immersion program in China after that, which is a great opportunity, but he only had a kind of basic conversational ability by the end of that. That's quite common for someone who studies a language formally for a period of years. But it's what happened in that third year when he stayed on in Beijing for a year by himself, when he became fully fluent. That's the year that we want to look at, because that's what made the difference. So what did he do that made the difference? Well, the first thing I want to point out is Ari's mindset. He's got an amazing mindset of, right, let's do this. Listen to him here talking about how he approaches speaking.
To get to the level where you can speak, where you can have like a really fluent conversation in Chinese with somebody, actually isn't really as hard as a lot of people would think. I think that if you spend maybe a year of just really focusing on conversations and a year of learning vocabulary and, preferably, living in a Chinese-speaking part of the world, you can get to a pretty solid level of conversation.
What I love about this mindset is that Ari realized after 2 years of formal study of Chinese, it's like, right, this is not working out. This is not fast enough. If I'm going to learn Chinese fast, if I'm going to get fluent in Chinese, I've got to start speaking right now. I've got to start spending all of my time speaking. And that's what he did. Even though he would have made lots of mistakes, it would have looked silly, he would have felt awkward all the time. It's the act of actually forcing himself to speak, get over that hurdle, that made the huge difference in that year he spent in Beijing afterwards. So this is something for you to think about in your own learning. If you want to improve your speaking, how much time are you actually spending speaking with people? So Ari made this decision to start spending all of his time speaking. But what I think is interesting about this is actually making that decision in the first place, because a lot of people might have decided to go back to school. Let's spend another year studying. That might get me fluent. So what was it that made him so confident that just diving headfirst into speaking all the time was going to work?
I spent a lot of time when I was in China memorizing vocabulary with Anki, just memorizing tons and tons of vocabulary. And if I had to redo my experience in China over, I think that I could have gotten so much more mileage by, like, I was spending literally hours on Anki per day. Like, huge waste of time.
So you go all the way to China and then sit doing Anki whilst you're
right. Why? Dude, no. You gotta just spend your time, like, speaking with as many people as possible.
What he's describing here is one of the big debates or questions in language learning. Do you learn a language by memorizing tons of vocabulary, or instead by immersing yourself in the language and then learning that vocabulary naturally? Ari's journey is what is really, really typical of people who start learning a language in school, which is that in school you end up kind of memorizing a bunch of stuff, but then once you get out into the real world, that's when you start to get immersion and you realize just how powerful that is.
What I've realized is, like, the whole, like, Anki business of memorizing vocab, I think it's oversold. Like, I feel like talking and reading is natural SRS. It's natural spaced repetition. Like, I think the way that babies learn languages is not by memorizing vocab lists. It's by learning to talk, and it's by, like, stuff like what you do in your course, where you just actually read stories and work through them, in an open-ended way.
I feel that this isn't always obvious to people with a more traditional learning background, but if you want to learn words, you don't have to memorize them. If instead you spend your time reading, speaking, listening, you're going to learn the most important words naturally anyway, because they just come up so often in those activities. And if you picked up any language tips so far in this video, please take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so I can send you future videos. Okay, we get it. So Ari learned his Chinese by speaking, but what did that actually look like? Did he just go out into the street and start speaking with people? Well, maybe, but he was also very deliberate about how he went about learning. And this is the hallmark of a very effective language learner.
Let's say I want to go to the market, right? I want to know how to say, how much is this, right? I want to know how to say $1. I want to know how to say $1.50. I want to know how to be able to say, that looks tasty, or like, I really like eating Fujonese food. There are these things that I know that I will need to be able to say in a basic conversation. And so what I do is I have this list of sentences and I just try to memorize them.
So this is not a random process. He thinks to himself, what do I need? Where am I going to go? What situations? Who am I going to meet? What do I need to be able to say? He figures that out in advance, and then he very deliberately goes and learns that stuff. But how?
So I'll go to a friend who speaks that native language. I get them to translate all the stuff that you want to say, and I'll memorize them, and then I'll just go out and practice them, right? I know what I need to say, and then I'll just go and try to use it.
Okay, but how do you memorize that stuff? Do you just learn it first time? Do you write it down? What do you do?
Record them. That's really important. You have to record what they're saying, for long-term memory retention.
So you notice just how deliberate he is about what he learns. He's not waiting for his teacher to tell him what to do, or just learning whatever happens to come next in the textbook. He knows what he wants and he goes and gets it. So this is something for you to think about in your own learning. Are you just a passenger in the process, letting your textbook or your teacher determine what you learn next? Or are you actually making your own decisions and controlling your own learning? But we are far from done yet, and this next bit might be the most important bit of all, because successful language learning is not just about what you do, but it's also what you don't do. Listen to Ari here talking to the great Steve Kaufman about knowing his limits.
With that, I would say I just kind of tried to focus on, I tried to separate what was important to me and what wasn't. So pretty early on, I decided there's no way I'm ever going to be able to write Chinese well. That's just not in the cards. I am not a calligraphy guy. So you know what, I was like, and I know that in introductory classes they really try to stress stroke order and you got to get the form right, all this stuff. But I just didn't want to focus that because there were things that were more important to me.
This comes right back to prioritizing what you want to learn. Ari knew that learning Chinese characters was going to be a big task. And he knew that that was going to distract him from learning to speak, which is what he really wanted to do. And so he made the conscious decision to not learn Chinese characters, at least not very much, at that point, so he could focus on his speaking. Now, people can and do debate whether that is a good approach or not. Point is, he's in control, he's making these decisions. Now, Ari did in fact go on to learn Chinese characters to a very high level later on, but listen to how even at this advanced stage, he still knows when to stop.
If I really tried aggressively, yeah, maybe I could get to the level where I could really comfortably read a book in Chinese like I can with English, but it would take so much to get to that level, and the reward wouldn't really be there, right?
I meet a lot of students who will always beat themselves up about there's words I still don't know, there's grammar that I still don't understand, and they live in this permanent state of frustration. But what you see here from Ari is the sign of a very mature learner who's thinking to himself, right, I know what I want to achieve, I know where I want to get to, and yeah, I could do more, but for me and my life, it's just not worth it, so I'm just going to leave it at that and be happy. And so if you want to learn Chinese, or any other language for that matter, what advice does Ari have for you about starting this journey?
First of all, do you have a really good reason for wanting to learn Chinese? They're like, well, because it looks cool in YouTube videos. Yeah. I'm like, no, but do you live in China? Or do you have Chinese parents? Because there's a lot of Chinese Americans, for example, who don't speak Chinese very well and who want to learn Chinese. I'm like, talking with your grandparents in Chinese is a great reason to want to learn Chinese. I have, I think, a very strong interest in languages and language learning and different cultures. And I think most people should just be content to say, you know what, Chinese, that would be amazing if I learned to speak Chinese, but it's just it would just take so much time to learn. It's just not worth it, And I think it's a perfectly fine answer.
And often when I think about friends of mine who have learned a language or many languages to a high level, often the real clincher, the thing that it comes down to at the end of the day, is this irrational passion for a language or for language learning, because that's the kind of thing that's gonna, really the only thing that's gonna sustain you for 10 years or more that it takes to learn a language like Chinese to a high level. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you don't live in Chinatown or you don't have 10 plus years of your life to devote to learning a new language, don't worry, you don't need that much time, because remember, Ari learned Chinese in a very short space of time when he was in China. And you can do the same if you learn the 8 things that polyglots do specifically to learn new languages quickly. And in this video, I'm going to show you what those 8 things are so you can copy them and learn a new language quickly. So go and check that video out right now. And please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you back for the next video.